Welcome to T.N Shadow Stories tonight. We're diving into a tale that will send shivers down even the bravest spine. Imagine this: a biting October chill, and a group of curious young friends venturing deep into the Maine woods, just to satisfy a little curiosity. Little did they know, just a few steps from their campsite, an ancient fortress lurks in the shadows, Fort Shadowbrook. This isn't just a historical landmark, it's a gateway to something else entirely. They say unspeakable secrets are kept within its walls, and the cries of the past still echo from every cold stone. And tonight, our 6 friends accidentally disturbed that terrifying peace. They stepped inside, cameras in hand, hoping to capture some eerie footage. But what they found was something far more horrifying than anything they could have imagined. A haunting that latched onto them, turning life into a living hell. Will they make it back alive? Can anyone help them escape the chilling grasp of the restless dead? Or will they forever be a part of Fort Shadowbrook, trapped between the living and the spectral? Turn off the lights, pull your blankets up high, and join me as we uncover the story of the fateful camping night at Fort Shadowbrook. Don't say I didn't warn you. The fateful camping night at Fort Shadowbrook. October, the crisp chill of autumn embraced the Whispering Pines forest in Maine, where ancient pine trees loomed, forming a dense green wall around the wild landscape. Tonight, a group of 6 young students from New Haven University had set up camp in a clearing nearby, not far from a historical site both renowned and notorious Fort Shadowbrook. They were close friends, each with distinct personalities but sharing a common passion for adventure. There was Lucas, the film student with curly, artistic hair, always carrying his old video camera, hoping to capture truly terrifying footage. Isabel, Lucas's girlfriend, a history buff and a connoisseur of ghost stories, her wide eyes always gleaming with curiosity, mixed with a yearning to experience the supernatural. Sophia, a quiet medical student with long, dark hair, usually tied back, but deep down, she possessed a peculiar sensitivity, often feeling strange vibrations others couldn't. Marcus, tall and muscular, always projecting strength and practicality, yet at times showing a charming shyness when faced with darkness and the unknown. And finally, Olivia and Daniel, the boisterous, fun-loving couple who always brought laughter to the group. But tonight, their laughter would soon fade, replaced by screams. They came not just for camping, but to satisfy their curiosity about Fort Shadowbrook, an ancient fortress built during the Revolutionary War, steeped in countless gruesome tales of fallen soldiers, executed prisoners, and lingering, tormented souls. Isabel was the most enthusiastic, having read extensively about the fortress, from dry historical accounts to chilling local legends of paranormal phenomena. You know, Isabel recounted, the campfire light flickering across her face, casting dancing shadows on the ground. Fort Shadowbrook was once one of New England's most infamous military prisons. They say the cries of severely wounded soldiers, the clanking of prisoners' chains, and even the weeping of innocent civilians held captive still echo within its stone walls. There are even rumors of tortures so brutal that the victims' souls could never pass on, forever trapped in the fortress's darkest corners, perpetually chained to their own agony. Really, that sounds terrifying. Olivia shivered, feeling a cold current run down her spine. Not from the wind, but from Isabel's words. Lucas chuckled loudly, trying to appear unafraid, though his eyes betrayed a hint of excitement. It's just ghost stories. Come on, probably just made up to attract tourists. But if it's real, then awesome. I'll get footage for the ages, a true student horror film. Don't be so dismissive. Lucas, Sophia said, her voice lower than usual, her eyes darting towards the fortress looming in the darkness, as if she could already see something. There are things we can't see with our ordinary eyes, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. Negative energy can accumulate in a place for hundreds of years, and it can affect sensitive individuals, even drag them into the abyss of darkness. As night fully descended, darkness swallowed everything. The initial excitement gave way to an odd, chilling sensation, as if thousands of unseen eyes were watching them from the woods. The wind rustled through the ancient trees, creating eerie sounds, whispers, moans, and the dry rustle of leaves like the footsteps of countless invisible beings approaching. The crescent moon hung low in the inky sky, just bright enough to reveal the imposing silhouette of Fort Shadowbrook in the distance. It stood there, a grim stone edifice, silent as an ancient monster hiding in the shadows, waiting for its prey, waiting for those who dared to trespass on its domain. "Hey, let's go check it out," Lucas suddenly suggested, his eyes glinting with defiance, mixed with an irresistible curiosity. "We're already here. It'd be a waste not to go in. Who knows? We might even capture some unique footage." "Right. Lucas, are you crazy?" Marcus frowned, a bad feeling washing over him, a cold shiver running down his spine. "It's dark, and it's a place known for ghosts. It's dangerous. We don't have any experience. What if something happens?" "Yeah, what if something happens?" Daniel added, his hair standing on end as he looked towards the fortress. "I heard people have gone missing in there." But Isabel was eager, her curiosity overwhelming any fear, her eyes gleaming as if enchanted. "Come on, Marcus. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We'll just go in for a bit, take a few pictures, then come back. Who knows? We might even encounter something." We have Sophia with her special sensitivity. Ultimately, the curiosity and adventurous spirit of youth prevailed. With flashlights in hand and phones recording, all six silently made their way towards Fort Shadowbrook, unaware they were walking straight into a nightmare, awakening entities that had slumbered for centuries, souls unwilling to endure solitude any longer. Stepping through the rusty iron gate of the fortress, an abrupt, chilling current of air swept over them, like an invisible hand tightening around their throats, making their breath heavy. A musty smell, a decaying earth scent, and an indescribable putrid odor, like dried blood and decomposition, assailed their nostrils, making Lucas wince, his stomach churning with nausea. The towering stone walls emerged under the faint flashlight beams, covered in moss and the marks of time, like scars of a deeply ingrained past. The wind whistled through the cracks, creating terrifying sounds like whispers, sighs, muffled sobs, and even sinister chuckles from countless trapped souls. Lucas turned on his video camera, the flashlight from the camera sweeping through dark corners, illuminating grotesque figures on the stone walls that seemed to appear and vanish in the darkness, waiting for a blink of an eye to disappear again. Isabel led the way, trying to read the corroded signs, but most were faded or destroyed, making the place even more mysterious and frightening, like a labyrinth of lost souls. "Everyone, be careful," Sophia whispered, her voice lower than usual, almost a warning, a faint murmur from a distant place. She felt a strange heaviness in the air, as if thousands of unseen eyes were watching them from the shadows, a sensation of cold threads coiling around her. Sometimes, she shivered as if someone had brushed past her, lightly touching her skin, caressing her hair, though she saw nothing. The chilling and unsettling feeling lingered, like a greeting from the other side. They decided to explore the underground tunnels first, where prisoners of war and those accused of witchcraft were believed to have been held during dark times. The deeper they went into the earth, the thicker, more suffocating, and bone-chillingly cold the air became, like stepping into a colossal tomb. Their footsteps echoed strangely, as if more people were walking with them, the echoes seeming to linger longer than normal, like a haunting refrain of endless, restless footsteps. Lucas constantly pointed his camera everywhere, trying to record anything unusual, hoping for priceless footage for his film. "Hey, do you guys hear that?" Olivia suddenly whispered, her voice trembling so much it was barely audible, her eyes wide as she peered into the darkness. "There's a sound, like moaning and clanking chains." Very close, everyone held their breath, listening. In the terrifying silence, a faint, prolonged moan, full of pain and despair, mixed with the clank of metal, seemed to come from the end of the tunnel, from a place where the flashlight's beam couldn't reach. The moan pierced their very souls, making their hair stand on end, goosebumps erupting all over their bodies. Marcus, who always tried to be brave, couldn't help but shiver, feeling an invisible pressure on his chest, as if someone was standing on it. "It's probably just the wind." Daniel tried to reassure them, but his voice also trembled, his eyes darting back and forth in the darkness, trying to find a logical explanation, an escape from the rising fear. But Lucas felt differently. He felt a sudden, bone-chilling blast of cold air, colder than any wind, so cold it numbed his brain, as if someone was standing right behind him, their cold breath on his neck, carrying the scent of death. He whirled around, the camera's flashlight sweeping through the darkness. Nothing but the feeling, a sensation of being watched, of something invisible touching him, clung to him, making him unable to move. He felt a light touch on his shoulder. They continued walking, each step heavy, as if an invisible force was trying to pull them back. When they reached a tunnel junction, Lucas's flashlight suddenly flickered wildly, then died completely, plunging them into absolute darkness, leaving them in a terrifying silence. "Damn it," Lucas muttered, trying to tap the camera, his fear escalating to its peak. Just then, a sharp, distinct clack echoed from ahead, like the sound of breaking bones. Immediately after, a small stone, no bigger than a fist, flew past Lucas at terrifying speed, grazing his hair and striking the stone wall not far away with a loud impact that echoed through the tunnel. The whole group panicked, Daniel even letting out a small scream. What was that?" Isabel cried out, her voice filled with terror, as she recoiled and pressed herself against Marcus, who was also trembling. No one's there," Daniel said, his eyes wide in the darkness, pupils dilated with fear. He pointed to where the stone had fallen, but there was nothing but darkness. "Who threw it? It couldn't have just flown on its own." Lucas stood frozen. He could have sworn he saw no one nearby, no silhouette, no movement. He felt his heart pound, a chilling, paralyzing sensation running down his spine, as if thousands of ants were crawling under his skin. He knew this wasn't a joke. It was a terrifying reality unfolding before their eyes. After the incident with the stone, the group panicked and decided to leave the suffocating tunnels, as if being squeezed by invisible specters. They headed upstairs to an iron railing overlooking a dizzying abyss, where the wind blew harder, carrying bone-chilling cold and an eerie sense of unease, like a warning from the abyss of souls. The faint moonlight was just enough to illuminate the ancient trees clinging to the cliff face, casting grotesque shadows that stretched across the ground, dancing like infernal figures, welcoming a new victim. As Lucas approached the railing, a sudden wave of nausea washed over him, not from his stomach but from his throat, as if something was squeezing it, trying to pull him down. He felt dizzy, and a fleeting, vivid image flashed through his mind, a gaunt figure, eyes empty with despair, standing on the railing, then throwing himself into the abyss, a silent, heartbreaking scream echoing in his mind, repeating over and over. He shook his head violently, trying to banish the horrifying vision, but it clung to him. "I don't feel good," Lucas said, his voice hoarse and full of terror, his eyes still haunted by the image. "It feels like someone threw themselves down here, and a scream. I heard a scream, very clearly." Isabel and Sophia looked at him with concern, their faces pale under the moonlight, like stone statues. "Are you okay, Lucas?" Isabel asked, placing a hand on his shoulder, feeling his body was cold to the touch. Sophia placed a hand on Lucas's forehead. She felt his forehead was clammy with cold sweat, and a cold, heavy energy emanating from him, a dark, desperate, and resentful energy. "The energy here is very heavy," Sophia whispered, her eyes glancing cautiously towards the railing, as if she could see what Lucas had seen. "You're being affected by it. There's immense pain here, a pain that can't pass on. In that moment, Lucas felt a strong pressure on his shoulders, as if someone was gripping him tightly, sharp nails digging into his skin, trying to crush his bones. A faint, horrifying whisper, indistinct but full of resentment and hatred, like a curse from hell, murmured his name by his ear. He shivered, trying to step back, but his feet felt glued to the ground, unable to move, as if an invisible force was holding him. "Lucas, what's wrong with you?" Marcus asked, seeing Lucas standing motionless, his eyes wide, staring into empty space, his body trembling uncontrollably. When Marcus tried to pull Lucas back, Lucas suddenly let out a piercing shriek, a soul-wrenching scream as if attacked by an invisible entity, tearing him apart. He collapsed to the ground, his eyes wide open, staring into the void with utter terror, tears streaming down his face, his mouth mumbling incoherent words. A red scratch appeared on his neck, as if from an unseen hand's nails, the scratch forming a small, peculiar triangle. The feeling of being haunted seemed to cling to him, like an unshakable shadow, a curse that had taken hold. From that night on, Lucas began to experience strange things, paranormal phenomena continuously haunting him, turning his life into a living nightmare. The days following the trip to Fort Shadowbrook were a series of unfortunate and terrifying events for Lucas. He began to have horrific nightmares every night, the image of a man hanging from the railing, repeating over and over in his dreams, haunting him every second. Sometimes, in his dreams, the man would turn his head, his face distorted, his eyes bloodshot and pupil-less, staring intensely at Lucas, his mouth mumbling unspoken curses. But Lucas could feel the immense rage, causing him to wake up in the middle of the night with a piercing scream and cold sweats, his bedding drenched. During the day, he often felt cold, despite the normal room temperature, as if an invisible, chilling presence always surrounded him, numbing his mind, his personal belongings, like his car keys, phone, or even his glasses, would mysteriously disappear, only to reappear in unexpected places or be strangely moved, as if someone was playing cruel games with him, full of malice. His video camera, once inseparable, also started acting up. When he tried to review the footage taken inside the fortress, the image would constantly glitch, and sometimes terrifying moans, eerie whispers, and the clanking of metal would emanate from the camera's speaker, even though he was certain there were no such sounds when he recorded. In fact, once while editing a video, Lucas saw a white blur flash across the frame, very quickly but enough to make him shiver, and a gaunt, skeletal hand with long, sharp nails seemed to briefly appear in a glitched frame, like a warning. The climax came one afternoon, when Lucas was driving on the highway. Suddenly, the car's control system malfunctioned, the steering wheel abruptly turning left with terrifying force, causing his car to swerve dangerously, nearly crashing into the median. Lucas panicked, desperately trying to regain control, and luckily escaped a near-fatal collision with a large, oncoming truck. When he pulled over, he saw a long, deep scratch on the car's body, as if from the claws of some creature. What was even more terrifying were 3 parallel scratches, like the marks of a hand, and he could faintly smell sulfur from the scratch. Marcus, Daniel, Olivia, and especially Isabel and Sophia, all noticed Lucas's drastic change. He became gaunt and pale, his eyes sunken from lack of sleep and extreme fear, like someone whose life force had been drained. He would frequently startle, panicking at strange sounds, sometimes even talking to himself as if arguing with an invisible entity, occasionally slapping his own face to try and escape the illusions. He was on the verge of a complete breakdown. "Lucas, you have to tell us what's happening," Isabel worried, hugging him tightly as he trembled on his bed, his body cold. "We'll help you, but you have to tell us." Lucas recounted everything, from the feeling of being haunted at the railing to the horrific nightmares, the strange phenomena with his belongings, the camera, and even the near-fatal accident. "I think "I think something followed me back from the fortress," he whispered, his voice full of terror, his eyes constantly darting around, as if seeing something others couldn't. It wants me dead. It wants to drag me down to hell with it, to make me suffer the same pain it did." Sophia, with her sensitivity, immediately believed Lucas. She felt a cold energy radiating from Lucas, a dark, desperate, and resentful energy. So strong it made her shiver too. "Lucas is right. A spirit definitely latched onto you. It's probably the soul of the man who was hanged at that railing. You're the most sensitive in the group, so that spirit chose you to convey something, or it wants to exact revenge on those who caused its death through you, and you're the perfect pawn." To help Lucas, the group sought out an old medium living in a small, dilapidated house nestled deep in a secluded forest on the outskirts of Salem. Mrs. Alara Vance, her house was covered in creeping ivy, its old wooden windows tightly shut, creating an eerie and mysterious aura, like a portal to another world. Mrs. Alara was a woman with long white hair, keen eyes that held an unfathomable depth, and a face full of wrinkles but exuding a gentle wisdom of ancient times, as if she had witnessed countless human lives. Around her, there was always a faint scent of herbs and incense, dispelling any foul air. As Lucas told his story, Mrs. Alara listened attentively, sometimes nodding slightly, her eyes half closed as if in a trance, communicating with an unseen world. After Lucas finished, she closed her eyes, her hand gently touching an old, worn jade amulet, murmuring ancient incantations no one could understand. The entire room fell into a terrifying silence, broken only by the wind whistling through cracks and Mrs. Alara's whispers, like the murmurs of thousands of souls. "You have inadvertently awakened a tormented soul," Mrs. Alara said, her voice deep and authoritative, as if speaking to an invisible entity lurking in the room. "That man, he was a prisoner held at Fort Shadowbrook. He was wrongfully accused, charged with treason, and brutally executed. His pain, his resentment, and his desire for revenge have been trapped there for hundreds of years, seeping into every stone, every piece of wood, becoming a part of the fortress itself. When Lucas approached the railing, your sensitivity attracted that spirit, a fateful connection. He didn't entirely mean to harm you. He merely sought release, wanted his innocence vindicated, but his anger blinded him, and his soul latched onto you, wanting you to share his suffering. So what can we do to help Lucas and help that spirit pass on?" "Mrs. Alara," Isabel asked, her voice filled with worry, as she squeezed Lucas's hand, feeling the coldness of his skin. Mrs. Alara opened her eyes, looking directly at Lucas, her gaze piercing his soul, seeing the dark shadows clinging to him. "To resolve this, you must return to Fort Shadowbrook, but this time with a different mindset. You are not going for curiosity, but to help, to perform a sacred ritual. You need to conduct a small ceremony to comfort that soul and pray for its release. But be careful. This spirit has suffered too much and may resist fiercely, for it does not wish to let you go. It has been too lonely in the darkness for too long." She instructed them step by step, her voice echoing like a bell from the past, each word like a prophecy. "First, just gather information." Mrs. Alara told Isabel to research the man who was hanged at the railing thoroughly. If she could find his name and story in as much detail as possible, it would greatly help in connecting with and soothing the spirit. The better they understood the spirit's pain, the easier it would be to set it free. Second, prepare offerings. She asked them to prepare simple but spiritually significant and cleansing offerings. Some incense to purify the air and attract positive energy, a white candle symbolizing light and peace, some blessed sea salt to ward off evil and create a protective boundary, and especially a personal item that Lucas could place at the site where the spirit was bound, for example, a clean white cloth, or a fresh flower, or a small letter expressing understanding and shared sorrow, like a promise not to forget. Third, he performed the ritual at the most powerful time. Mrs. Ilara emphasized that the ritual must be performed exactly at midnight on a full moon night, at the very spot of the railing where the man died. That was when the veil between the two worlds was thinnest, and the spirit's energy would be strongest. Also the time it was most susceptible to influence. Finally, you pray and release once there. Lucas would lead. He needed to light the incense, burn the candle, and sprinkle salt around the area to create a protective circle, a small fortress against the darkness. Then he had to offer sincere prayers, apologizing to the spirit for their inadvertent disturbance, expressing empathy for its pain and injustice, and imploring it to let go of its hatred and pass on to the other side. Most importantly, Lucas had to place his personal item down, as a pledge not to forget the spirit's injustice, and as a final connection so the spirit could depart peacefully, for the suffering to end. The group decided to follow Mrs. Ilara's instructions. No longer doubting or scoffing, Isabel spent days in the library, poring over old historical documents, military records, and local newspapers from the 18th century. Finally, she found a faded record of a soldier named Thomas Abernathy, wrongfully accused of spying for the Prussians and hanged at Fort Shadowbrook in the autumn of 1780. He swore his innocence until his last breath, and his final wish was to be exonerated and buried near his home, a plea forever ignored. With the information and offerings prepared, on a full moon night, the group returned to Fort Shadowbrook. This time, the atmosphere was no longer as terrifying as before, but carried a solemn, chilling silence, as if the fortress was waiting for something, a fateful moment. Exactly at midnight, the full moon hung directly above Fort Shadowbrook, casting an ethereal silver glow on the railing area, like a stage set for a final act. The wind blew harder, carrying terrifying whistling sounds, like countless souls wailing, and also like the cheers of curious entities from the other side. The group created a circle of sea salt as Mrs. Ilara had instructed, each grain shimmering under the moonlight like an exorcism gem. At the railing, Lucas nervously lit the incense, its pungent scent wafting through the air, seeming to dispel some of the cold, but also attracting an unseen attention. He lit the white candle, its flame flickering wildly in the wind, casting grotesque shadows on their faces, shadows that seemed to want to devour them. Lucas carefully placed a pristine white rose at the spot where he felt the spirit of Thomas Abernathy still lingered, gently laying down a small letter containing words of understanding and prayer he had written, like a sincere promise from his heart. As he did so, a sudden, bone-chilling cold blast swept over them, so strong it nearly extinguished the candle, its flame writhing as if in resistance. The air became thick and heavy, as if a massive, invisible entity was pressing down on them, making it difficult to breathe. Sophia clutched Isabel tightly, feeling a powerful presence, an immense pain, a surge of resentment erupting around them, like a storm of emotions. "O spirit of Thomas Abernathy," Lucas began, his voice trembling but resolute, each word seemingly carving itself into the air. He struggled with all his might to maintain his composure, facing his ultimate fear. "We are those who have inadvertently disturbed your eternal slumber. We apologize for our curiosity and our lack of understanding. We know you have endured wrongful accusations and suffering for centuries, falsely accused and brutally executed. We know you yearn for vindication, for peace, for liberation from the shackles of fate." As Lucas spoke these words, a prolonged, agonizing, and resentful moan echoed from the abyss, reverberating throughout the fortress, sending shivers down their spines to their very bones. The candle flame suddenly flickered wildly, and the shadows of the trees stretching across the ground seemed to twist and contort into grotesque shapes, like skeletal arms reaching out. "Please let go of all hatred, all pain," Lucas continued, feeling immense pressure on his chest, as if something was trying to choke him, pulling him down. "Your injustice has been acknowledged, and we will remember your story. Please rest in peace, transcend to the other side, where there is no more suffering and hardship, where you can find the peace that was denied to you, an eternal peace. Suddenly, a bone-chilling wind swept through, so strong it nearly knocked Marcus and Daniel off their feet. It blew away all the incense and extinguished the candle, plunging them into absolute darkness. In the near-total darkness, a piercing scream echoed, not of pain, but of absolute fury, like the roar of a cornered demon. The group recoiled in terror, huddling together, but Lucas couldn't. He felt a cold, skeletal hand grasp his wrist, a powerful pull trying to drag him into the abyss. The sound of bones creaking. "Let go, let go," Lucas screamed, struggling, but the invisible hand tightened its grip, its nails seemingly digging deep into his flesh, drawing blood. He felt a cold, negative energy, carrying the scent of decay, trying to invade his body, trying to possess him. A faint red glow flashed in the darkness, like the eyes of an enraged entity. Sophia, with her sensitivity, sensed this struggle. She saw a faint black shadow engulfing Lucas. She immediately pulled out a small vial of holy water that Mrs. Ilara had given her, and without hesitation, she shouted an ancient Latin incantation. Mrs. Ilara had taught her, simultaneously splashing the holy water towards Lucas, who was being pulled. Immediately, a sizzling sound like water on fire filled the air. A plume of white smoke rose from Lucas's position, and the invisible hand released him, vanishing into the air. A high-pitched, furious, and agonizing shriek echoed from the abyss, then fell silent. Lucas collapsed, gasping for breath, his body trembling violently, gagging. His wrist was red and deeply bruised, as if constricted. But strangely, there was no blood. Isabel held him tightly, tears streaming down her face, feeling his heart pounding erratically. In the ensuing silence, there were no more screams, no more moans, no more feeling of being watched. The wind still blew, but it no longer carried the terrifying cold. Instead, it was a cool, refreshing breeze, like a final breath of peace. Lucas felt a strange lightness, as if a great burden had been lifted, a curse finally broken. The cold and nausea in his throat completely vanished. He looked at Sophia, who nodded faintly, her face also showing signs of peace, though her eyes still held a hint of weariness and lingering terror. From that night on, Lucas's nightmares ceased. His belongings no longer mysteriously disappeared. His camera returned to normal, and no more white blurs or whispers appeared in his footage. Lucas felt his health and spirit fully restored. However, the mark on his wrist remained, a horrifying reminder of that fateful night at Fort Shadowbrook, of a world he never thought existed. And so, the story of the fateful camping night at Fort Shadowbrook became an inseparable part of Lucas's and his friends' lives. It was not just a terrifying memory, but a reminder that there are things in this universe that science cannot yet explain. Mysteries still hidden in the shadows, waiting for those who dare to explore. Lucas was no longer someone who scoffed at ghost stories. Now, he was a person who had touched the veil between life and death, and he knew that some spirits are still there, waiting to be heard and released. But there are also vengeful spirits, ready to drag anyone down with them, to forever sink into darkness and suffering. Would they dare to return to Fort Shadowbrook again? Or would they let that haunting forever linger in their minds, becoming a silent curse? The answer remains in the future, in the silent dark nights, where the whispers of the past still linger and shadows still lurk, waiting for new prey. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to T.N Shadow Stories so you don't miss our next chilling tales. See you in the next video.